week. So I thought we would take some time to talk about the expressions that we learned this session. Now, everybody, you're going to need the chat box for this activity. So if you can go ahead and open the chat box, I've put some, so I'll put a little message there. So if you want to type a message real quickly in the chat box, just to say hello or something, because we're going to use the chat box for this next activity. Okay. All right, so here's what we're going to do. So in this first activity, I'm going to post an expression, but the expression will be missing a word. So what I want to do is we're going to use the chat box. So again, no microphones for this activity. So when I put the message in the chat box, let's see who can be the first person to post the missing word. Okay, so when I post something in the chat box, let's see who can be the first person to remember. Now, this session we've learned about 7 expressions. So some of you were here for some of them, maybe you weren't here for all of them, but I would like to see if anybody can remember some of these expressions. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste the expression in the chat box, but a word is going to be missing. So we're going to use the chat box here. So again, I'm going to mute all the microphones for just a moment. So if you want, you can just repeat them to yourself at your phone there or at your computer. So everyone just repeat after me. Once in a blue moon. Be on the same boat. Every cloud has a silver lining.
Every cloud has a silver lining.
Okay. The glass is half full or half empty.
The glass is half full or half empty.
Okay. Cooped up.
Cooped up.
Bite off more than you can chew.
Bite off more than you can chew.
When it rains, it pours. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about the Burlington English reading. So the reading activity for this week was called the sugar problem. So we're going to go back and look at the reading and do some activities with it today. But the first thing I would like to do is to talk a little bit about word families. Okay, now we're going to discuss word families here today, and we're going to look for some word families in the reading. And then next session in the summer, we're going to talk more about word families. But first off, let's talk about what word families are. So word families are groups of words that share the same root and or root word. Now, the formal word for this is called a lexeme. Now, don't worry about that. But the idea here is we take words and we build on these words. So if you think about families, think about your family. You have a mother, a father, grandmother, grandfather, cousins and uncles. All of these people belong to the same family. So words are very much like real families. They share the same kind of beginning. They share the same sort of root. Now, many of the words that we use in word families come from languages that also had kind of parts of words. So, for example, English is a language that is not Latin or Greek, but we borrow from those languages. So we use these word family ideas from languages such as Latin and Greek. And those often were languages that would build around the root. Now, again, many of you speak languages, Spanish, for example, Portuguese perhaps, that also share Latin as its base. But again, we also have people who speak French in the group. Those are also Latin languages, but maybe your language uses these ideas in a different way. So again, we're talking mostly about word families that build from Latin and Greek. Now, we often build words around the root using what we call affixes. Now, everyone, you can say this together with me there at home. Let's say these words together. Prefixes and suffixes. Okay, so let's say those words again. Prefixes, suffixes. Okay. Now, prefixes are the parts of a word that go before the word. So, for example, that part pre means before. Okay. And then the next type of affix is called a suffix. Suffixes are parts of a word that go after the word. Okay, now you might be a little confused right now, so we're going to do a demonstration. I'm going to share an example here on the next screen and show how word families basically work. Okay, so everyone on the screen, you should see the word form. You can say that word, form. Now, the word form, maybe it's similar in your language. The word form means shape. For example, a circle, so a circle would be an example of a form. A square, those would be forms, okay? Some of you know this word form like a document. When I have to fill my personal information, we might say that's a form, okay? So it's something we fill in with information. Okay, so for example, this word form, this would be an example of what we call a root word. Everyone say that, root word, okay? Now, this root word is going to be a word that we're going to build on. Now, first thing I want to show you is it comes from the Latin forma, which means shape. And if I want to use it as a verb, so if I form something, if I shape something, the verb is formare. Okay, now again, I don't speak Latin, so I don't know if that's what it sounded like in Latin. But again, this is not an English word. This is a word we borrowed from another language. Okay. Now, to continue thinking about how we create new words, many new words, we often use prefixes to put something before the word to make a new word. Now, guys, look at some of these prefixes. For example, in. So, for example, inform. Una or uni. Uniform. Okay, you probably know what a uniform is, right? And maybe this word here, this prefix, reform. Reform means to change something, right? To take something and try to change it, to make it better, to start again. So when I use these particular prefixes, I put them next to the word, and now I've created a new word. So for example, inform, right? You probably know information. So to inform means to give somebody important information or news. A uniform, right? A uniform is what we wear, like if we go to work, some places like the military, the police, right? A restaurant, McDonald's, they might wear uniforms. And to reform something means to change it. So maybe reform the laws in your country, to reform the particular workplace situation to make it better. So those are prefixes, okay? Now, we can also put ideas at the end. So for example, remember we have suffixes. Suffixes are things we add at the ends of words, and those also can help make new words. So for example, I can put ation. Sometimes I can put ed. Sometimes I can even put er. And I've created a new word. So when I put these words together, now I've got new words based on this particular root of form. So now I have, okay, you say these words with me, information, uniformed, okay, and the last one, reformer. Now, before we move on, let's take a moment. So on the screen, I'm going to indicate what these words mean. So for example, information. Information is a noun. So information is, basically, some piece of news that we can find or learn. So guys, for example, we can get a lot of information from the internet. Now, sometimes that information is not good information, but we can get information, something that we can get and learn about, okay? All right, the next word, uniformed. Now, some of you see that ed at the end, and you might think that that's a verb. But actually, in this case, we might use it as an adjective to describe somebody. So, for example, we might say a uniformed police officer. So this would be a police officer wearing a uniform. You know, sometimes police officers don't always wear uniforms. So sometimes they might be kind of in secret. So in this case, maybe they're not uniformed. Okay. And then finally, reformer is another noun, but in this case, it is a person. A reformer is a person who wants to change a system, for example, the government. So reformers are often people who come in and want to change something, right? They want to change some sort of system, okay? Now, before we go to the reading, what I would like to do, I'm going to open the chat box for just a moment. Now, what I would like for everybody to do in the chat box right now is let's see if we can think of examples. So, for example, let's think of words that have Asian at the end of them. So for example, in the chat box, can somebody think of a word, and anybody can share in the chat box. Or if you want to use your microphone, can you think of a word that has Asian or shun at the end of it? Can somebody give us an example? Again, you can use the mic or you can use your chat box. Okay, so Rena says communication. Anybody have another example? Okay, transportation. Okay, that's good. Let's have one more. Who could give us one more shun example? Okay, okay, in a station. Yeah, okay. All right, now let's skip the ED for just a moment. Let's do ER. Now again, we're talking about ER as a person. So I know, for example, a few weeks ago, we talked about words like bigger and smaller. We're not talking about those words. So let's think of ER words that we would use for a person. So I used reformer as an example. Now again, chat box or Mike, can you tell us an ER word that would be a person? This one should be easy. Okay, good. Okay, manager, speaker. Okay. All right, guys, this is easy. I'm talking to you right now. Who am I?
Teacher.
Oh, congratulations. All right, you got it. Okay. So in this case, what we're doing is we're building words. And that's really what word families are about. So yeah, for example, we take teach, right? And then we put ER. So we've got teacher. Now, of course, that's not true for every person. For example, if we think about somebody who plays music, can somebody think of that? Can somebody think of that one? What do we call somebody who plays music? Again, you can use the mic or the chat box. Anybody know?
Musicians.
Musician, congratulations. So again, one of the problems is many of these word families are probably going to be things we have to learn. Now, some of you might say, Mr. John, it's not fair. Our Spanish speaking, French speaking, these students who speak Latin languages, they're going to have it's going to be easy for them. But the truth is, sometimes they're going to make mistakes too. Because one problem that we have with languages, especially languages like Spanish and French, is that we often have things that we call false friends. So everyone, if you can see that on the screen, false friends are those words. Yeah, good, Ozum, singer. That's good. Yeah, false friends are those words that might look similar, but are not the same. Now, my Spanish-speaking students, I think you'll joke at this one. You'll like this one. So everybody, I know you don't speak Spanish, but I've shared this one before in class. But this is an example of a false friend. So the Spanish word here is embarazada. Now, my Spanish-speaking students, so that would be Daniela and Okaina, you're probably laughing at this moment, because the problem is embarazada looks like a word in English, but it has a totally different meaning. Let's see if Daniela or Okaina can tell us what this word means in English.
Pregnant.
Pregnant. Yeah, so here's the problem.
Pregnant.
the word embarazada, and it looks like this word in English, embarrassed. Well, these two words are not the same. No, they're not even close. So the problem is I tried to use this word many years ago when I was learning Spanish. So I told my professor I was embarazado. And my professor started laughing. And I said, "What's so funny?" And my professor said, "Are you pregnant?" And I said, "What do you mean pregnant?" I said, "I was embarrassed." She said, "No, that's not the word." So the problem is we have many words. And again, maybe some of you have words in your language too that might look similar to words in English, but be careful. We often have many of those words that we call false friends. So yes, be careful. Now, of course, the other word that we have, and everyone, you can say this word too, this other word is called cognates. Now, a cognate is when the word looks the same and it is the same. Now, of course, English and Latin, I mean, because again, English is not a Latin-based language, there are many words in English that look exactly the same. So for example, in Spanish, the word información looks exactly the same and has the same meaning as information. So again, everybody, again, I don't want to focus just on Spanish. Of course, that's my second language, but you probably have some examples of words that maybe your language borrowed into English. But just be careful, especially those of you who speak Latin languages. English has these two issues. We have false friends, which can be tricky. And then, of course, we also do have words like cognates. And the good news is there are probably many more cognates than there are false friends. But still, be careful when it comes to this. Okay, now what I'd like to do, I'm going to clear the screen now. What I'd like to do is I'm going to leave our presentation for just a moment, and I'm going to go to our reading. So everybody, you should be able to see the reading on the screen here in just a moment. So I'm going to leave the presentation, and I'm going to go to our reading. Okay, now I don't know, can everyone see that? I'm trying to make it as big as I can. Okay. Now, what I would like to do is, and again, you guys, you can use the chat box or the microphone. Let's see if we can find a couple of examples of some word families, some words that have a sort of root idea and that we changed into another word. Now, for example, I'm going to circle one right away. If you notice right at the beginning, we have the word baked. Does everyone see that word? What do you think was the original word? What was the root word of the word baked?
Bake?
Yeah, basically just bake. Yeah, that's a simple one, right? So in this case, that would be an example of a word family. It would be just the word bake. So if I had to, X out the D, then you could see there it is, bake. Okay. All right. Now, there are not many words in this reading that follow word families, but let's see if we can find maybe one more. So I'm going to kind of scroll them. So there's one, vending. Okay. So vend, for example, and again, that's a Latin word. So if you speak again Spanish or whatever, you probably recognize vend means to sell something. So vend, vending. Okay. All right, let's see if we can find maybe one more in this first
Going?
We're going so far.
Which one?
Going?
Going. I'm looking. Oh, right at the front, yeah. Yeah, so there's going. Okay. Let's look kind of a little bit later. There you go. That's the one I was thinking of, sugary. Sugary, of course, the root word here is sugar. And then the letter Y, when we have sugary something, it means we put lots of sugar in it.
And anyway?
Now this one would be a little bit different. Let's put this one here on the screen. Anyway would be an example of what we call a compound word. A compound word is when we put two words together. So in this case, anyway would not be a word family, it would be a compound word. So English has lots of those. For example, you might remember we talked about words like baseball. Some of you might remember some of these words like sports. those would be compound words. So not exactly a word family. Okay, so good guess, good guess. Okay, well, we don't have time to look through the whole reading, and really the reading does not have
Enjoyable.
many one. Yeah. Which one?
Enjoyable. Enjoyable.
Enjoyable. Yes,
But
that's one a
yes.
little bit later in the reading. Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. So again, there are lots of word family words. Now we're going to come back to this in just a moment, but I just want to say before we kind of continue. So in thinking about these word families, so again, I'm going to just return for just a moment. I want to finish with this quick point about word families, okay? So English does have many words that we build, but one of the tricky parts about English, one of the difficult parts, is that English also has many words that look the same, even though they are different parts of speech. Now, for example, the word like. Look at these two sentences. So, for example, if I want to use the word like as a verb, I'm sure everyone would agree with this first sentence, right? We all like to study English, right? Everyone agrees, right? Okay, we'll clap. We'll clap for them.
Yes, sure.
Okay, good answer, good answer. Okay, so, but notice we also use the word like. In fact, we use it many different ways, but here's another example. We also use the word as a preposition. Now, preposition is one of those little words, words like to and from. So if you notice in this next example, it says, this food tastes like chicken. So what does that mean, by the way? This food tastes like chicken. Does anybody know what that means?
Similar.
Yeah, so in this case, maybe I'm eating something. I don't know exactly what it is, but I say it's similar to chicken. Its flavor, the taste of it is similar. Yeah, so in this case, we use like to use as a comparison. This looks like this. This tastes like this, right? So in this case, notice the word like. If you notice in both examples, the word is the same word, but it has two different meanings. So that's another challenge when it comes to reading in English and when it comes to speaking, because we often have words that have similar meanings. Now, we're going to talk more about word families in the summer session. So we're going to kind of stop this discussion about word families here, but I just want to mention to everybody that we are going to talk more about them in the summer session, okay? So, because I think word families are really going to help everybody when it comes to being a better English student. But what I'd like to do is let's go back for just a moment to the reading, okay? Now, guys, I hope everyone has had a chance to do the reading. So the reading, again, was called The Sugar Problem. Now, we don't have time to do all of the activities that I was hoping to do today. And if you have not had a chance to do the reading, please do it, because we are going to do a couple more activities when we come back in the summer session. But for example, I wanted to look at the vocabulary focus questions here. Okay, so this is kind of finishing up our word family discussion. So if you noticed in the reading, okay, I want to make it bigger on the screen here so we can see it. In the reading, there were some examples of words that look very similar, but were used in different ways. Now, everyone, you can say these at home. Let's say these together. Affect, link, offer, tax. Okay. All right. So if you notice, though, the words on the left are used as verbs. Now, again, a verb is when we do an action of some kind. And the words on the right are words that are used as nouns. Nouns are things, people, places, things that we can see, we can touch, we can taste, we can smell. So in the reading, there were uses of these words in these particular different ways. Now, I'm going to minimize for just a moment. Now, just to kind of finish our discussion here on word families, let's look at the question that we see here on the screen. Now, it may be a little small, so I'm going to try to zoom in if I can. Okay, so by looking at the chart, let's do a couple of these examples here. So for example, which verbs have the same noun form? Look over on the left side. Which ones look exactly the same as the nouns? Well, for example, I see link, right? So I'm going to put link in the box. Okay. Offer, and I see tax. All right, now let's see if we're correct on that first answer. We are. Link, offer, and tax. So what I'm trying to show you here this morning is that English has many of these words, words that look the same but have different meanings and different uses. All right, now let's look at the next question. Okay, now looking at the list again, which verb and noun sound the same but are spelled differently? Well, you probably notice it's the first one, right?
Fact.
Yeah. Now, I will tell you this. Some people do try to pronounce these words differently. For example, some people try to say affect and some people say effect, but I don't think that's really necessary. To be honest, most of the time we use the word as a noun. This word effect or effect here is more common than this word here, but still we use both of these words a lot. So, but sometimes if you're not sure, well, which one do we use? Okay, now what I'd like to do to finish us here this morning is we're going to go to the next activity. Okay, now what I'd like for you to do right now, everybody, if you can see those on the screen. Okay, now what I would like to do is just give you a moment. So there are 3 sentences here on the screen, and I'm going to read them. Now, what I would like for you to do, okay, again, so we're just going to use the chat box here. So again, no mics for this activity. I want you to tell me if you think the word is being used as a noun or a verb, okay? So again, we'll use the chat box, so no mics here. So number 1, should the government tax cigarettes? Okay, so the word tax here, are we using it as a noun or a verb? Okay, you put the answer in the chat box. Let's see if you can tell me. So is it a thing or is it an action? And if you're not sure, you can put a question mark. Okay. All right, I see 2 votes for verb and 1 vote for noun. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, looks like a few people have said verb. So I'm going to click on verb for the first one. Okay. We'll check the answer here in just a moment. All right. Let's look at the second question. Should rich people pay higher taxes than poor people? Why? Okay. Now in this question, are we using it as a noun, as a thing, or as a verb? Okay. So I see a lot of people put noun. Okay. So I'm going to choose noun for this one. All right, so let's look at the next one. So the word is offer. Have you ever received a job offer? What happened? Okay, what about this one here? Offer. Is it being used as a noun or a verb? Okay, so I see noun. Okay. Okay, a few people. Okay, Ozim says verb. Okay. Okay, I'll give you a hint. If you notice the word offer, I do see a word before it, the word job. So in this case, the word job is probably describing the word offer, but we'll choose noun here and see. Okay, well, let's see how our answers are turning out. So the first one we said, should the government tax cigarettes? We are correct. It is a verb. Okay, let's look at number 2. Should we pay higher taxes? Most people said noun. Congratulations. And then finally, have you ever received a job offer? The answer there would be yes, it is a noun. Okay? Now, again, our goal here today is we're going to be talking more about word families, but I also want to take time in the summer session to kind of review what are nouns, what are verbs, what are adjectives. I think those are things that everybody here in the group would really appreciate. And we're going to finish the reading activity in the next chat. So we're going to talk more about the reading, but I just wanted to kind of introduce some ideas here for this particular chat today. Okay, well, guys, our time is almost up for today's chat. Now, I want to remind everybody that there is no chat next week. So next week is a little break. So we're going to take 1 week break. Maybe everybody needs a break. Maybe you don't need a break, but I can tell you the teacher needs a little break, just a little one, to get ready for the next session. So I want to first off thank everybody for joining me here for the spring session. I know this has been a very difficult time, and we're going to continue online until the end of June. So I just want to remind everybody that our next chat will be Tuesday, May 26th from 10 a.m. to 11. And we'll continue with the lesson, the health lesson that we're doing, and we'll continue with the reading. So I will send you all of this information in your email. Now, again, to remind everybody, the spring session finishes this week. And then we're going to be on break from Monday, May 18th to Monday, May 25th. And then the summer session will begin again on Tuesday, May 26th. And we will continue the session until Wednesday, July 1st. Now, we have not talked about July or the future, so right now we're still going to be online, but we'll discuss more as we learn more, okay? Okay, well guys, again, if you'll go back to your email and click on the sign out form and make sure you sign out, please. I would really appreciate it. And I want to thank everybody for joining us here for the spring session, and I hope to see everybody for the summer. So, guys.